Get out of my lobby.
Ma'am, I have a reservation.
We don't rent rooms to animals.
Here's my confirmation. If you could just...
Security!
Brenda Caldwell snapped her fingers.
Remove her before she scares off my real guests.
Please, I just need one night.
You're bothering me. Go back to your dump and rent a room there.
Brenda stepped closer, her lip curling. Tattered coat, ruined shoes.
This is the Grandview Hotel, not a charity!
She slammed the desk. The vase rattled. Every head in the lobby turned.
Get out! I'm calling the FBI. This beggar is being far too persistent and insulting my hotel to boot.
The young black woman clutched her bag and said nothing. What Brenda didn't know was that the call she was about to make would destroy everything she'd built. The Grandview Hotel had stood on Charleston's waterfront for 4 generations. White columns, iron balconies, hand-polished brass. Every surface designed to whisper one word: exclusive. And for the past 11 years, one woman had made sure that word meant exactly what she wanted it to mean. Brenda Caldwell didn't inherit the hotel. She seized it. When her father suffered a stroke in 2012, she walked into the boardroom the next morning, fired 3 senior managers, and appointed herself CEO before lunch. No vote, no discussion. The board learned to stay quiet after that. Under Brenda, the Grandview became the highest-rated luxury hotel in the Lowcountry. Travel magazines praised its curated elegance. What they didn't write about were the complaints. 11 formal grievances in 18 months. A black couple celebrating their anniversary, escorted out during dinner, told their attire violated the dress code. They'd been wearing formal evening wear. A black businessman denied a conference room he'd booked 3 weeks in advance, told it was already reserved. It wasn't. A 67-year-old retired schoolteacher detained by security for 4 hours on suspicion of stealing towels. Nothing was missing. Every complaint followed the same path: filed, acknowledged, buried. Brenda's legal team sent polite letters expressing deep concern and offering complimentary stays that no one ever accepted. The pattern continued because no one with enough authority had ever seen it from the inside. Until now. 2 weeks before Olivia Summers walked into that lobby, she sat in a windowless conference room at the FBI's Civil Rights Division in Washington. Deputy Director Haynes slid a folder across the table. The Grandview Hotel, Charleston. 11 discrimination complaints in a year and a half. 3 settled quietly. The rest went nowhere. Olivia opened the folder. Photographs, statements, dates and names in silence. We sent 2 formal investigators last year, Haynes continued. Both times, the hotel scrubbed everything before they arrived. Someone tips them off. So you need someone they won't see coming. Exactly. Haynes leaned back. You go in as a guest, low profile, look like someone they'd target, document everything. When you have enough, you call it in, and we move. Olivia studied the file. Brenda Caldwell, 53, donor to the Charleston Police Benevolent Fund, board member of the Lowcountry Tourism Council, connected to 2 state senators through campaign fundraising, the kind of woman who had every door in the city held open for her, and who decided which doors stayed shut for everyone else. Her head of security, Olivia said, tapping a photo. Craig Dawson, ex-military, 3 excessive force complaints, all involving black guests, all dismissed internally. That's your pressure point. The staff will follow Caldwell's lead, but Dawson is the enforcer. Olivia closed the folder. She already knew what she'd pack: a torn jacket from the back of her closet, shoes she hadn't worn in years, no jewelry, no tailored clothes, nothing that would signal authority or status. She'd learned this from her mother. Grace Summers had cleaned hotel rooms for 22 years, first in Atlanta, then in D.C. Olivia grew up watching her mother iron other people's sheets, fold other people's towels, and absorb other people's contempt with a silence that looked like patience but was really something closer to survival. They don't see you, her mother once told her. They see what they expect, and what they expect is nothing. Olivia had spent 14 years at the FBI, proving that assumption wrong. But for this assignment, she needed them to see exactly what they expected. A woman who didn't belong, a woman they could dismiss, A woman who would document every word, every glance, every cold shoulder, and turn it into a federal case. She slipped her recording device into the lining of her bag, a small unit, voice-activated, invisible. Her FBI credentials went into a sealed pocket beneath the false bottom. To anyone who searched the bag, it would look like the belongings of someone with very little. That was the point. The night before she left, she called her mother. "Going undercover again." Hotel assignment. A pause. "Be careful, baby. Hotels have long memories for faces like ours." Olivia zipped her duffel bag. The torn jacket lay folded on top. She wasn't checking in as a guest. She was walking into a trap she designed herself, and no one at the Grandview had any idea what was coming. Olivia arrived at the Grandview on a Tuesday morning. The air smelled like gardenias and old money. 2 doormen in pressed uniforms flanked the entrance. One held the door for a white couple carrying shopping bags. When Olivia approached, he looked past her like she was part of the sidewalk. She pulled the door open herself. Inside, the lobby was everything the photographs had promised. Marble floors polished to a mere shine. A crystal chandelier the size of a small car. Fresh orchids on every surface. Soft jazz drifting from hidden speakers. And behind the front desk, a clerk with a tight smile and a name tag that read Megan. Megan's eyes tracked Olivia from the door to the desk. They moved from the torn jacket to the worn shoes, then up to her face. And something shifted. Not surprise, something colder, something practiced, like a gate dropping. "Can I help you?" "I'm checking in. Reservation under Summers." Megan didn't touch her keyboard. "Are you sure you have the right hotel?" "Positive. Here's my confirmation." Olivia held up her phone. Megan glanced at it the way someone might glance at a counterfeit bill, already deciding it was fake before looking. "I'll need to verify this. It might take a few minutes." It took 22. Olivia stood at the counter while Megan checked in 3 other guests who arrived after her. A white couple with matching luggage, 2 minutes. A businessman in a tailored suit, 90 seconds. A woman with a small dog in a designer carrier, 3 minutes plus a compliment on the dog. Each time Megan smiled, made small talk, handed over key cards like party invitations. Each time Olivia stood 3 feet away, invisible. A bellhop walked past her twice. Both times he carried luggage for white guests who had arrived after her. Both times he looked through her like she was made of glass. On his second pass, he nearly bumped into her and didn't say "excuse me." When Megan finally returned, she didn't apologize. "Room 114, ground floor." "I booked a standard room. Shouldn't that be on the 3rd or 4th floor?" 114 is what's available." Olivia took the key card. She already knew what she'd find. The elevator ride was short. A couple stepped in on the 2nd floor. The woman clutched her purse tighter the moment she saw Olivia. The man positioned himself between them, one hand on his wife's back. Neither looked at Olivia. Neither spoke. When they reached the ground floor, the woman exhaled audibly as they stepped out, like she'd been holding her breath. Room 114 sat at the end of a dim hallway, past the service entrance, next to the laundry room. The hum of industrial dryers vibrated through the wall. The window faced a dumpster enclosure, 2 rusted bins, and a stack of flattened cardboard boxes. The sheets smelled like they'd been washed but not changed, a faint ghost of someone else's perfume still clinging to the pillowcase. The air conditioner rattled every 40 seconds, like a cough it couldn't shake. She set her duffel on the bed and opened her notebook. Entry 1. Front desk delay, 22 minutes. 3 white guests served ahead. Room assignment, ground floor, service corridor, despite standard booking. Elevator incident, nonverbal hostility. She wrote the time. She wrote Megan's name. She wrote every word exactly as it had been spoken. By noon, the pattern was unmistakable. She walked to the hotel restaurant for lunch. The hostess, young, blonde, a practiced smile that stopped at her eyes, looked at Olivia's reservation on the screen, then looked at Olivia and frowned. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked." Olivia glanced past her. At least 6 tables sat empty. White linen, polished silverware, untouched water glasses catching the afternoon light. "There seems to be several." Fully booked. The hostess didn't blink, didn't waver. You could try the cafe down the street. Olivia nodded and turned to leave. She made it 4 steps before a white couple walked in behind her. No reservation. The hostess beamed. "Right this way. Would you prefer the window or the garden view?" She wrote it down. Entry 2. Restaurant refusal at 12:15 p.m. 6 empty tables visible. White walk-in couple seated immediately after. After lunch, a sandwich from the cafe the hostess had recommended, eaten alone on a park bench outside. She changed into a swimsuit and headed for the pool. The Grand View's rooftop pool was its crown jewel. Heated infinity edge overlooking the harbor, cabanas draped in white linen, a bar serving cocktails in crystal glasses. Guests lounged in the afternoon sun like they'd been poured into their chairs. Olivia chose a lounge chair near the shallow end and opened a book. 90 seconds. That's how long it took. A security guard materialized beside her. Broad shoulders, buzz cut, a radio clip to his belt. His name tag read, Craig Dawson. Pool is for registered guests only. I'm a registered guest. She held up her key card. Room 114. Dawson took the card from her hand. Didn't ask. Took it. He turned it over, held it up to the light, examined the magnetic strip the way a cashier examines a suspicious $100 bill. Then he pulled out his radio. "Front desk, this is Dawson. Can you verify a guest in room 114? Name Summers." He kept his eyes on Olivia the entire time, not watching her the way you watch a guest relaxing by the pool, watching her the way you watch a shoplifter reaching for the display case. The radio crackled. "Confirmed, she's registered." Dawson handed the card back without a word. He didn't apologize. He didn't leave. He walked to the far end of the pool deck and stood there, arms crossed, feet planted, watching. Olivia returned to her book. She counted. Over the next hour, Dawson circled back to her chair 7 times. 7 slow passes. He paused each time, close enough for his shadow to fall across her page, looked at her, then walked back to his post. No other guest on that rooftop received a single visit. On his 4th pass, a woman in a wide-brimmed hat pulled her 2 children out of the shallow end and moved them to the opposite side of the pool. She dried them off with quick, anxious hands, glancing once at Olivia. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her children asked why they were moving. She shushed them. Near the poolside bar, 2 staff members huddled together, sharing a drink they weren't supposed to be having during shift. Their voices carried across the water in the still afternoon air. Why do they even let people like that book here? Megan said Caldwell's going to handle it personally. Good. Last thing we need is this place turning into a, you know. The other one laughed, a short, ugly sound that bounced off the water. Olivia closed her book. She memorized their faces. She noted the time. 2:47 p.m. Back in room 114, the dryers humming through the wall, she spread her notes across the bed. Front desk discrimination, elevator hostility, restaurant refusal, pool surveillance, staff commentary. 5 documented incidents in a single day, all systematic, all targeted, all pointing in one direction. She called her handler. "It's worse than the complaint suggested. This isn't a few bad employees. It's a culture. It comes from the top. Caldwell sets the tone and everyone falls in line. They don't even try to hide it." "How's the security chief?" "Dawson, exactly what the file says, aggressive, targeted. He treated my key card like a piece of evidence and surveilled me for an hour straight at the pool. 3 excessive force complaints in his file, and none of them surprise me." "You have enough to move?" Olivia looked at her notes. 5 entries, 5 documented incidents of targeted race-based discrimination, each one captured on a recording device. Clear, time-stamped, undeniable. Almost. I need Caldwell herself on record. Something public. Something she can't explain away with a policy memo or blame on a low-level employee. Don't push it. Let her come to you. Olivia stared at the ceiling. The air conditioner rattled again. That same stubborn cough. She didn't need to push anything. She'd already seen the look in Megan's eyes when she'd mentioned Caldwell's name. The deference. The fear. Brenda Caldwell didn't just run this hotel. She controlled it. Every smile, every silence, every turned back. A woman like that wouldn't tolerate Olivia's presence for long. She'd come, she'd make it personal, she'd make it public, and when she did, every single word would already be on record. It happened 2 hours later. Olivia walked back into the lobby to ask about her air conditioner. The rattle had become a grind, and the room temperature was climbing. A reasonable request, a guest asking for maintenance, nothing more. But Brenda Caldwell was standing at the concierge desk, reviewing event details for a private reception that evening. She wore a cream blazer, pearl earrings, and the expression of someone who owned every square inch of air in the building. She saw Olivia before Olivia reached the front desk. "You." Olivia stopped. "I was just going to ask about—" "I know exactly what you're going to ask." Brenda walked toward her, heels clicking on marble, each step deliberate. "You're going to ask why someone like you is still inside my hotel." "My air conditioner isn't." "Your air conditioner." Brenda laughed, a sharp, hollow sound. "You should be grateful you have a room at all. I don't know how you got a reservation, but I promise you, someone is getting fired for that mistake." Guests in the lobby began to look up from their phones. A man at the coffee bar set down his cup. 2 women near the elevator stopped mid-conversation. "Look at you." Brenda's voice rose. She wanted an audience, and she had one. "Tattered coat, ruined shoes, you smell like a bus station. This is the Grandview, 4 generations of excellence, and you're standing in my lobby like you wandered in off the street." "I'm a paying guest, Miss Caldwell. I have a confirmation." "I don't care what you have." Brenda snapped her fingers at Craig Dawson, who had already started moving from his post near the entrance. "Craig, get her out. Now. Drag her out if you have to." Dawson reached Olivia in 4 strides. He grabbed her arm, not her elbow, her upper arm, the way you grab someone you're detaining, not someone you're escorting. His grip was hard enough to leave marks. "Ma'am, let's go. I have a right to be here. Let's go." He pulled her toward the door. Her feet slid on the marble. She didn't resist, but she didn't make it easy either. She kept her body steady, her breathing controlled. 14 years of training held her posture even as Dawson's fingers dug into her arm. A teenager near the lounge pulled out his phone and started recording. A woman whispered to her husband, "Should we do something?" He shook his head. Behind them, one of the security guards, younger, newer, a name tag that read Tommy Walsh, leaned toward his partner. "That was messed up." His partner didn't look at him. "You want to keep your job? Keep walking." Dawson shoved Olivia through the front door. She stumbled on the top step. He tossed her duffel bag after her. It hit the sidewalk and spilled open. A toothbrush rolled into the gutter. A folded shirt landed on the concrete. Brenda appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "And don't come back. Ever." She looked at the doorman. "If she sets foot on this property again, call the police." She turned to walk back inside, then stopped. Something about Olivia's calm unsettled her. Most people who got thrown out shouted, cried, threatened lawsuits. This woman just stood on the sidewalk, picking up her things, her face completely still. It made Brenda angry. Angrier than the confrontation itself. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she kept in her favorites. A direct line, earned through years of donations and political favors. "This is Brenda Caldwell at the Grandview Hotel. I need agents here immediately. I have a trespasser who's been harassing my guests and refused to leave. She's aggressive, possibly unstable. I want her arrested." She paused, listening. "Yes, I'll hold the scene. Just send someone, now." She hung up and smoothed her blazer. There, that would end it. The FBI owed her. She'd written enough checks to the Bureau's Community Outreach Fund to furnish half their field office. Inside the lobby, the teenager was still recording. The video would hit social media in less than an hour. But that didn't concern Brenda. She controlled the Grandview. She controlled the narrative. She always had. Outside, Olivia knelt on the sidewalk and zipped her duffel bag closed. Her arm throbbed where Dawson had gripped it. The toothbrush was scuffed. The shirt had a gray smudge from the concrete. She reached into the bag's side pocket and pulled out her phone. Not to call a lawyer, not to call the news. She called her handler. She made the move. Public confrontation, physical removal, witnesses, at least one phone recording. and she just called the FBI herself. Wants me arrested. A pause on the other end. Then a sound she rarely heard from her handler. A laugh. She called us to arrest you? Direct line, wants agents on scene immediately. Well then, I'd say the case just built itself. We'll be there in 15 minutes. Olivia hung up. She sat on the curb outside the Grandview Hotel, her duffel bag beside her, and waited. 15 minutes. That's all Brenda had left. 14 minutes later, two black SUVs turned onto the street and stopped in front of the Grandview. Brenda saw them from the lobby window. She straightened her blazer, checked her reflection in the glass, and walked toward the entrance. This was her moment. The cavalry had arrived. Her cavalry. And that woman on the sidewalk was about to learn what happened when you crossed Brenda Caldwell. Two agents stepped out. Dark suits, polished shoes, credentials visible on their belts. Special Agent Harris, tall, square-jawed, the kind of man who looked like he'd been assembled from a government handbook. And Special Agent Brooke, shorter, composed, eyes that didn't miss anything. Brenda met them at the front steps, her hand already extended. Thank God you're here. Brenda Caldwell, CEO. We spoke on the phone. She shook Harris's hand firmly. She's been harassing my guests, trespassing, refusing to leave. I want her arrested immediately. I want charges filed. Harris looked at her, then at the hotel, then at the young black woman sitting quietly on the curb with a duffel bag. Ma'am, can you describe exactly what happened? What happened is that woman walked into my hotel looking like she crawled out of a dumpster. Torn clothes, busted shoes. She had no business being here. I asked her to leave, politely I might add, and she refused. My security team had to physically remove her. She's clearly unstable. Did she threaten anyone? She didn't have to. Her presence was the threat. This is a luxury establishment. My guests pay $400 a night. They shouldn't have to share a lobby with that. Agent Brooke wrote something in her notebook. Her expression didn't change, but her pen moved faster. Harris nodded slowly. Ms. Caldwell, we're going to need to speak with the woman in question, and we'd like to use your conference room if that's available. Of course, whatever you need. Brenda smiled. Finally, cooperation, order. The system working the way it was supposed to work, for people like her. She led them through the lobby. Guests watched. Staff straightened. Megan at the front desk went pale. Craig Dawson moved to follow, but Harris held up a hand. Just us for now. The conference room was on the second floor. Mahogany table, leather chairs, a painting of the Grandview's founder hanging over the fireplace. Brenda sat at the head of the table because, of course she did. I want to make sure we handle this properly, she said, folding her hands. I've been a supporter of the Bureau for over a decade. The Community Outreach Fund, the annual gala, I'm sure you're aware. Harris sat across from her. Brooke remained standing near the door. We're aware of your contributions, Ms. Caldwell. Good. Then you understand the kind of establishment this is, and you understand why someone like her doesn't belong here. A knock at the door. Brooke opened it, and the room changed. Olivia walked in, but not the Olivia that Brenda had thrown out of her lobby, not the woman in the torn jacket and busted shoes, not the woman who'd been dragged across marble and shoved onto a sidewalk. This Olivia wore a pressed navy suit. Her posture was straight. Not the quiet, hunched stillness of a woman trying to disappear, but the squared shoulders of someone who had just taken command of the room. An FBI badge hung from her hip. Her credentials were clipped to her jacket. Harris and Brooke stood. They didn't just stand, they straightened. Shoulders back, chins level. Special Agent Summers. Harris's voice was different now, formal, respectful. Ma'am. Brooke nodded. Ma'am. Brenda's smile collapsed. It didn't fade, it broke, like a plate hitting a floor. What? What did you just call her? Olivia didn't answer immediately. She pulled out a chair across from Brenda, sat down, and opened a folder. Inside, photographs, printed logs, a USB drive, a stack of time-stamped reports. She arranged them on the mahogany table with the precision of someone who had done this many times before. Then she looked at Brenda and said nothing. 10 seconds. 10 full seconds of silence. The clock on the wall ticked. Brenda's breathing quickened. The painting of the Grandview's founder stared down from the wall like a witness. Miss Caldwell. Olivia's voice was calm, measured, every word placed like a brick. You told me I didn't belong in your hotel. You said I looked like I wandered in from a shelter. You ordered your security chief to drag me across your lobby. You threw my bag onto the sidewalk. And then you picked up your phone and called the FBI, my FBI, and asked them to arrest me. Brenda's mouth opened. Nothing came out. My name is Olivia Summers. I'm a special agent with the FBI's Civil Rights Division. I've been conducting an undercover federal assessment of this property, evaluating how your leadership treats people when no one important is watching. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Brenda gripped the edge of the table. That's not. You can't. I can. I did. And I recorded everything. Olivia tapped the folder. 22 minutes waiting at your front desk while 3 white guests were served ahead of me. A ground floor room next to your laundry facility despite a standard booking. Refused service at your restaurant while 6 tables sat empty. Your security chief surveilled me for an hour at the pool and verified my key card like it was counterfeit. Your staff discussed keeping people like me out at 2:47 p.m. by the poolside bar. And this afternoon, you publicly humiliated me, ordered my physical removal, and called the bureau to have me arrested. She paused. Let the list sit. I'm not here for payback, Miss Caldwell. But I need you to understand something. Olivia leaned forward. The way you treat someone when you think they're nobody, that tells me exactly who you are. Brenda's hands trembled against the mahogany. Her pearl earrings caught the light as she shook her head, over and over, like she could undo the last 12 hours by refusing to accept them. This is entrapment. You set me up. I checked into your hotel as a paying guest. Everything that happened after that was your choice. Every word, every order, every phone call. Olivia closed the folder. The Grandview Hotel is now the subject of a federal civil rights investigation, effective immediately. She turned to Harris. Secure the building. I want all personnel files, internal communications, and guest complaint records. Nobody leaves until we've documented the chain of command. Harris moved for the door without hesitation. Brenda sat frozen at the head of her own table, in her own hotel, in the room named after her family, and for the first time in 11 years, she had absolutely nothing to say. Within 30 minutes, the Grandview Hotel looked like a federal crime scene. 2 additional SUVs arrived. Agents in Navy windbreakers with FBI printed across the back walked through the front door like they owned the building. Because, for all practical purposes, they now did. A forensic technician set up a mobile evidence station in the business center. Another sealed the server room. A third began copying the hotel's security camera feeds onto encrypted drives. Guests were not evacuated, but they were informed. A calm, measured announcement from Agent Brooke in the lobby. This hotel is currently the subject of a federal investigation. You are free to leave or remain in your rooms. We appreciate your cooperation. Most stayed, not out of cooperation, out of curiosity. Some pulled out their phones. The teenager who had recorded the lobby confrontation was already uploading his video. Within an hour, it would have 40,000 views. By midnight, 2 million. Olivia set up her command center in the very conference room where Brenda had expected to watch her get arrested. The mahogany table that had held Brenda's folded hands now held evidence. Printed transcripts, audio files queued on a laptop, photographs time-stamped down to the second. She started with the recordings. The first was from the front desk. Megan's voice, bright and warm for the white couple. "Welcome to the Grandview. Let me get you checked right in." Then flat, suspicious, 17 seconds later when Olivia stepped forward. "Are you sure you have the right hotel?" The contrast was surgical. Same desk, same clerk, same minute. 2 completely different human beings, separated by nothing but skin color. The second recording captured the restaurant hostess. Fully booked. Then, 41 seconds later, to the white couple who walked in behind Olivia. "Right this way. Would you prefer the window or the garden view?" The third was the pool. Dawson's voice on the radio. "Front desk, this is Dawson. Can you verify a guest in room 114? the sound of his boots pacing the deck. 7 passes, 7 documented approaches to a single guest in 60 minutes. The fourth was the staff conversation by the bar. Why do they even let people like that book here? And the laugh. That short, ugly laugh that bounced off the water. The fifth was the lobby. Brenda's voice, loud enough to echo off marble. You're bothering me just by breathing in here. And then, drag her out if you have to. And then the sound of a duffel bag hitting concrete. Olivia played them in order, without commentary, for the 2 agents assisting her. When the last recording ended, the room was silent. Pull the staff, she said. Start with the front desk clerk. Megan Holloway sat in the conference room 20 minutes later. Her hands were shaking. She hadn't asked for a lawyer, she'd asked for water. I need you to tell me about the Grandview's guest screening process, Olivia said. Megan stared at the table. There's no official process. Then why did you make me wait 22 minutes while you checked in 3 white guests ahead of me? Silence. Megan. Ms. Caldwell has preferences. Megan's voice was barely audible. She calls them standards. She says certain guests hurt the brand image. She never writes it down. She just, you know when someone doesn't belong. She makes sure you know. How? If she sees someone at the front desk who doesn't fit, she'll walk over after and ask why you let them check in. She'll say things like, is that really the kind of guest we want representing the Grandview? And if you don't handle it the next time, she'll put you on probation, or worse. Did she ever use racial language directly? Megan's eyes filled. Not the words you're thinking, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew what she meant. Everyone. Olivia slid a printed document across the table. Do you recognize this? Megan looked at it and closed her eyes. Yes, it was an internal memo distributed 6 months earlier. Subject line, Guest Standards Protocol, Maintaining Brand Excellence. 3 pages of carefully worded guidelines about guest profile alignment, aesthetic consistency, and ensuring the comfort of our core demographic. Nowhere did it mention race. It didn't need to. Every employee who read it understood exactly what it meant. Ms. Caldwell wrote this? She dictated it. Her assistant typed it. Everyone on staff received a copy. 3 more employees were interviewed that afternoon. Each one told the same story with different words. A housekeeper said she'd been told to pay extra attention to rooms occupied by black guests, checking for damage more frequently, reporting any noise complaints immediately, regardless of whether any noise had actually occurred. A valet said he'd been instructed to park certain guests' cars in the overflow lot behind the building, even when the main garage was half empty. A concierge said she'd stopped recommending the hotel's own spa to black guests after Brenda questioned why those people were booking premium services. None of them had reported it. All of them had reasons: rent, student loans, a sick parent, the economy. The familiar math of survival: keep your head down, keep your paycheck, keep your mouth shut. Then came Tommy Walsh, the young security guard who had whispered, "That was messed up," in the lobby, walked into the conference room, looking like a man who hadn't slept in a week, even though it had only been a few hours. "I want to cooperate," he said, before Olivia could ask a question. I should have said something a long time ago. Walsh had been at the Grandview for 8 months. In that time, he'd witnessed Craig Dawson physically detain 4 black guests, all without cause, all without incident reports. He'd seen Dawson confiscate a key card from an elderly black man and make him wait in the lobby for 40 minutes while verifying his identity. He'd watched Dawson follow a black family with 2 young children through every floor of the hotel for their entire 3-day stay, reporting their movements to Brenda by text message. "He texts her?" Olivia asked. "Every time. She responds with instructions. Keep watching. Make sure they check out on time. Don't let them near the event space." "Do you have access to those messages?" Walsh pulled out his phone. "Dawson showed me some of them. Thought they were funny. I screenshotted 3. Olivia looked at the screenshots. Brenda's name at the top of each thread. Her words, typed in her own hand, directing surveillance of guests based on nothing but their appearance. The evidence she'd never put in a memo. The quiet part, said out loud, preserved in pixels. Thank you, Tommy. Craig Dawson was less cooperative. He sat in the conference room with his arms crossed and his jaw set, the way men sit when they've decided that silence is the same thing as strength. He'd refused a lawyer. He seemed to think that was a power move. Mr. Dawson, you physically removed a federal agent from this hotel today. You grabbed her arm with enough force to leave bruises. That alone is assault on a federal officer. I was following orders. Whose orders? Miss Caldwell's. She's the CEO. She says remove someone, I remove them. And the 4 other black guests you detained over the past 8 months? Were those also Ms. Caldwell's orders? Dawson's jaw tightened. I don't recall specific incidents. Let me refresh your memory. Olivia opened a file. June 14th, a retired school teacher named Harriet Coleman, 67 years old. You detained her for 4 hours in a back office on suspicion of stealing towels. A search of her room found nothing missing. She was released without an apology. She filed a complaint. It was dismissed. Dawson said nothing. August 9th, a couple named Raymond and Denise Porter, celebrating their 25th wedding anniversary. You escorted them out of the restaurant during dinner, citing a dress code violation. They were wearing formal evening wear. Mr. Porter is a retired Marine. He said it was the most humiliated he'd felt since basic training. Nothing. October 2nd, Gerald and Tanya Brooks, traveling with their 2 children, ages 6 and 9. You followed them for 3 consecutive days, every floor, every meal, every pool visit. You texted updates to Ms. Caldwell. Their 6-year-old daughter asked her mother why the angry man kept watching them. Dawson's arms uncrossed, just slightly. His fingers gripped his knees. I want a lawyer. That's your right. Olivia closed the file. She didn't need Dawson's cooperation. She had Walsh's testimony, Brenda's text messages, the complaint records, and the security footage. Dawson's silence would speak loudly enough in court. While the staff interviews continued, a second team of agents had been working through the Grandview's financial records. What they found had nothing to do with civil rights, and everything to do with why Brenda Caldwell had been so untouchable for so long. The hotel's accounting system showed a pattern of inflated vendor invoices, maintenance contracts with companies that didn't appear to do any maintenance, catering services billed for events that never happened, consulting fees paid to firms that shared a P.O. box with Brenda's personal accountant. Over 4 years, the discrepancies totaled $3.2 million in unreported income, funneled through shell companies and buried in the books like fossils in limestone. Olivia reviewed the preliminary findings with her team. This started as a civil rights investigation. It's now also a federal tax fraud case. She set the financial report beside the discrimination evidence. 2 separate violations, 2 separate sets of charges, both originating from the same source. Agent Harris leaned against the doorframe. Her lawyer's downstairs. Wants to talk. Send him up. Brenda's attorney, a silver-haired man named Prescott, who charged $800 an hour and looked like it, sat down with the practiced calm of someone who had negotiated his way out of rooms like this before. My client is prepared to take corrective action, he began. Termination of the security chief. Comprehensive staff retraining. A public apology. We'd prefer to resolve this quietly and avoid unnecessary. Quietly. Olivia repeated the word like she was tasting something bitter. 11 guests were discriminated against over 18 months. 4 were physically detained without cause. 1 was a 67-year-old retired schoolteacher held for 4 hours on suspicion of stealing towels that were never missing. A 6-year-old girl asked her mother why the angry man kept following them. And today, your client publicly humiliated a federal agent, ordered her dragged across a lobby, and called the FBI to have her arrested. She paused. Quietly is exactly how these violations survived for 18 months. That ends today. Prescott's calm cracked. A tightness around the jaw, a shift in his chair. You should also know, Olivia continued, that our forensic team has identified significant financial irregularities in your client's books. Inflated invoices, phantom vendors, unreported income. We're looking at a parallel tax fraud investigation. Prescott's pen stopped moving. I'd recommend you advise your client to start thinking about cooperation rather than containment, Mr. Prescott. The window for quiet resolutions closed the moment she picked up that phone. She stood. The meeting was over. Down in the lobby, the teenager's video had crossed 500,000 views. The hashtag Justice at the Grandview was climbing. And in room 114, the room next to the laundry, the room with the rattling air conditioner, the room that faced the dumpsters, an FBI forensic tech was photographing the space as evidence of discriminatory room assignment. The empire Brenda Caldwell had inherited was crumbling. Not from the outside, not from competition or market forces or bad luck, from the rot she had nurtured, rewarded, and protected for 11 years. Until the woman she'd thrown onto a sidewalk walked back in wearing a badge and dismantled it from the inside. The federal indictment came down 3 weeks later. Brenda Caldwell was charged with 12 counts of civil rights violations under Title II of the Civil Rights Act, 3 counts of tax fraud, 2 counts of obstruction of a federal investigation, and 1 count of assault on a federal officer. The moment she ordered Dawson to grab Olivia's arm and drag her across the lobby. Craig Dawson faced his own set of charges. 4 counts of unlawful detention, 2 counts of excessive force, 1 count of assault on a federal officer. His military record, which he'd worn like armor for years, couldn't protect him from the weight of 4 black guests who had been held without cause, and a 6-year-old girl who still flinched when she saw a security uniform. Megan Holloway cooperated fully. In exchange for her testimony and the internal memo she confirmed, prosecutors reduced her charges to a single misdemeanor. She would never work in hospitality again. She said that was fine. She said she couldn't stomach it anymore anyway. Tommy Walsh was not charged. His testimony became the backbone of the prosecution's case. The insider who had seen everything, screenshotted the text messages, and finally said out loud what everyone at the Grandview had known, and no one had been willing to admit. The trial lasted 9 days. The prosecution played Olivia's recordings in open court. Every word Brenda had spoken in that lobby echoed through a federal courtroom. "You're bothering me just by breathing in here." And this time, 12 jurors were listening. The restaurant hostess's voice, Dawson's radio calls, the poolside staff laughing about people like that. Each recording landed like a hammer on glass. Brenda's defense team argued corporate discretion. They argued aesthetic standards. They argued that Brenda's language, while regrettable, did not constitute a federal crime. They did not argue that she was innocent because the recordings made that impossible. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Brenda Caldwell was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison for tax fraud and 2 additional years for civil rights violations to run concurrently. 6 years total. She was ordered to pay $3.8 million in restitution, $2.4 million to the IRS for unreported income, and $1.4 million divided among the 11 victims who had filed complaints. The judge added a personal note from the bench, something judges rarely do. "Ms. Caldwell, you inherited a historic property and a position of extraordinary privilege. You used both to systematically degrade people based on the color of their skin. The law does not permit that. This court does not permit that. And the community you claim to serve deserves better." Craig Dawson pleaded guilty before the verdict came in. 18 months in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, a permanent ban from any security or law enforcement position. When the sentence was read, Harriet Coleman, the 67-year-old retired schoolteacher he had detained for 4 hours, was sitting in the 3rd row of the gallery. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She was there, and that was enough. The Grandview Hotel was placed under a federal consent decree. The terms were non-negotiable. A mandatory anti-discrimination compliance program, an independent civil rights auditor reporting directly to the Department of Justice, diverse hiring mandates at every level of staff, and quarterly reviews for 5 years. The hotel's board of directors removed Brenda's name from the building within a week. The iron letters that had spelled Caldwell above the entrance were taken down on a Wednesday morning. By Thursday, The holes in the stone had been filled. The teenager's video had crossed 12 million views by the time of sentencing. News outlets from coast to coast covered the verdict. The hashtag Justice at the Grandview trended for 3 consecutive days. Legal analysts called it a landmark case for civil rights enforcement in the private sector. Advocacy groups cited it in 4 separate pending lawsuits against other luxury establishments. But inside the courtroom, after the cameras left and the gallery emptied, Olivia sat alone in the front row for a long time. She wasn't celebrating. She was thinking about 11 people who had walked into a hotel expecting to be treated like human beings and walked out carrying something they hadn't brought with them. The specific, heavy knowledge that they were right to feel what they felt, and that no one had believed them until a federal agent felt it too. 6 months after the verdict, the Grandview reopened under new management. The lobby looked the same. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, fresh orchids. But something had shifted. The doorman held the door for everyone. The front desk seated guests in the order they arrived, regardless of what they wore or what they looked like. It wasn't perfection. It was a beginning. Harriet Coleman, the retired schoolteacher detained for 4 hours over towels that were never missing, was invited back as an honored guest for the reopening weekend. She stayed in the penthouse suite. She used every towel in the bathroom and left housekeeping a handwritten note. "Thank you for treating me like a person." In Washington, Olivia filed her final report on the Grandview case. It was entered into the DOJ's training database as a model for undercover civil rights enforcement in the private hospitality sector. Within 3 months, 3 luxury hotels across the Southeast quietly launched internal audits after their legal teams reviewed the verdict. No press releases, no announcements, just the quiet sound of an industry looking at itself in the mirror and not liking what it saw. Olivia walked out of the FBI field office on a Friday afternoon. The hallway was long, fluorescent lights, gray carpet, government beige walls. She carried a cardboard file box under one arm and her jacket over the other. She didn't expect anything. The case was closed. The paperwork was filed. But as she passed the first office, an agent stood up from his desk. He didn't say anything. He just stood. Then the agent across the hall did the same. Then the next. And the next. By the time Olivia reached the end of the hallway, every agent on the floor was standing. Some nodded. Some put a hand over their heart. No one had given an order. No one had sent a memo. No one had planned it. They had all seen the footage, the lobby, the dragging, the duffel bag hitting the sidewalk. They knew what she had endured without breaking cover, without raising her voice, without once abandoning the mission. And they knew she had walked back into that conference room and dismantled an empire with nothing but a folder and the truth. She reached the elevator, set down the box, and pulled out her phone. She called her mother. "Hey, Mom. Hey, baby. How'd it go?" "They see us now, Mom." Her voice cracked, just slightly. "They see us." But here's what Brenda Caldwell didn't know yet. The tax fraud was only the beginning. What the FBI found buried deep in the Grandview's financial records, connections to a network of shell companies spanning 4 states, would change everything. Want to know what they uncovered? Stay tuned for part 2. If this story made you feel something, drop a comment. Have you ever been judged before anyone even knew your name? Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe, because this is only part 1. Yo. People show you who they really are when they think you don't matter for real. The way they treat the nobody, that is who they are. Not the smile they give the boss, not the handshake for the camera. Watch how they treat the invisible.